What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Get the Bag podcast. I'm your host, Gladia Castro. Got my co-host Tim Park,
What's up,
and
Sam?
today, what's going on? This is episode 26, I believe. So we're just kind of rolling through. I still can't believe it's already June
I
or
know
July, 4th of
July
July, uh,
coming up.
next week. So we're smack in the middle of summer, but always got the free game for you guys. So really excited for today's episode. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, follow us on IG or any of our social platforms. I believe all of our links are down below. Uh, but today's episode is really, really cool because, this person I went to high school with, we go way, way back, graduated in the 2000s, shows us our age a little bit too. But, we were both athletes and somehow got connected through LinkedIn and like IG, like people you went to high school with, you still kind of follow through Facebook or Instagram. And somehow we
hmm
reconnected late last year again. And he was kind of telling me about tech sales and fintech and all the amazing things and kind of his journey. And he also is investing in real estate too. So, really excited to bring him on to share his story and share why there needs to be more people of color in tech. The opportunities are there, talking
hmm
about sales. We're in real estate, so we deal with sales a lot. So he's going to break that down. Let's welcome Matt Vasquez to the Get the Bag podcast. What's going on, Matt?
Hey, what's going on? Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Yeah,
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah, we go way, way back.
way back, too far back.
Yeah, when I said 2000s, I was like, yo, man, I feel old just saying that.
Yeah, my 20th year reunion is next year, so there's that.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's
Ooh,
still going on. I always wonder how that goes because like you have to have one person, right? Or like a basically
you
kind of
need
a
you need
set
someone
group
to
of.
spearhead it, right? Or
Yeah,
spearhead.
yeah,
exactly. And then a
exactly.
group of, I can't think of the word right now, but like, yeah, you need somebody to kind of like lead the charge and get things going. So I always appreciate those people because it's like, I wouldn't do that
I would
shit.
never do that.
Yeah, exactly. But awesome, man. I'm glad we can finally get you on.
Yeah,
I know
thank you
we
so
kind of
much.
had some schedule stuff, but I think there's tons of value that you can add, especially in the tech space. We haven't really had anybody in tech. I have
hmm
a tech background, but somebody who's like really been in tech pretty much almost their entire professional career. I know you did some fitness stuff, but
Yeah.
still sales, right?
hmm
Sales is kind of your main background. But tell us a little bit about yourself for people who don't know you.
Yeah, like I said, Gladia and I went to high school together, Del Mar, our former Dons.
Yeah.
Yeah, got into tech about 10 years ago. Was a general manager at 24 Hour Fitness, was running 4 different gyms, ended up accidentally stumbling into tech. So I had no idea about tech, didn't even know what it was. I mean, I knew what it was, but no idea about opportunities in tech. And I had a good friend of mine that I mentored at the gym. He was working at a company called Intuit. And when I was
Mm.
time to leave the gym, he reached out to me, and the rest was history. I've been in tech, like I said, almost 10 years, 10 years next year. So it's been a
Wow.
great
Wow, man.
journey. Yeah, thank you. It's been a great journey, ups and downs, roller coasters, different challenges, but probably met some of the best people I've ever met. And one of my mentors is someone that I work with today. So he's been a mentor of mine for
Mm.
10 years. And that's probably the most exciting aspect are the connections that I've made throughout my career.
That's awesome. Welcome again. I'm hoping to hear some, old school stories about G. So, but
Oh no.
no, but no, I know how, especially minorities in tech, so I was in tech for a little bit as well too. So, tech sales, I have a tech sales background as well. So, tell us how you got into tech, I guess, and
Yeah.
then what was your experience, in the space, and like, tell us about, I guess, minorities a little bit in that space when you got into it.
Yeah, so I guess, like I said, I was at the gym, and when I went into tech, I went to work right into it. One of the best companies I've ever worked with. Very diverse. They focused a lot about diversity, and One of the big aspects there was, meeting connections and having that drive of being trained correctly. And so I really didn't understand, like, I didn't really focus on minorities in tech just yet. It wasn't until I got later on in my career where I started seeing a difference in, I guess, hiring or minorities just in general, mainly on the Latino side, right? Being Mexican-American, you don't really see too many Mexican-Americans in sales or on the tech side as much. I was at Intuit, did pretty well there and ended up going to a few different startups to help build out teams there. And I was at a certain company and I realized I was the only Mexican on the team. So, my goal there was, I come from two parents that, grew up, they were pickers at the age of 4 and 5, right, picking in the field. So I come from very hardworking parents. My mom worked for social services for 30 years. My dad worked in HR for 25 years in tech. And having that drive and that also that background in my culture, you start appreciating your culture as you get older. You start wanting to know where you come from.
Right.
And that was like a big turning point for me was how do I help other people that maybe have been in a similar position, didn't know about tech, think that they're at the glass ceiling, this is where they're at, and that's all they can go, right? So for me, that was a big focal point because you can write your own history, right? You can write your own page, your own story, but how do you do that? What are the tools to do that? And basically, I feel like it's just lack of knowledge out there, right? So, I've been reaching out to old mentors of mine at, on the football level. I used to also coach high school football. I was a defensive coordinator there. So reaching out to these young kids and letting them know how much opportunity there are in tech. We have people that are in tech who've started their own companies. I've worked with people that were brand new in tech, never even made a phone call, and now they're running departments and they're a part of C-suite. And so it's exciting to see these rise. So I was at a company, and again, I didn't even understand the minorities in tech kind of aspect until I was looking around one day and I was like, wow, it's just me right now. So, but I was proud of that. It's just, again, my goal is how do we get the tools to kids, right? How do we understand that? And also, how do we let them know this is the age we're going in, right? You need type of tech. I really appreciate all the other aspects of skill level jobs as well. We need those. You can never go without those. There also are other opportunities. And I feel like sometimes minorities, we fall to one bucket sometimes. And so I think that's really important is knowledge, letting them know there's opportunities. And there's so many in tech. You can do anything you want in there. If you want to learn how to get into real estate, like me and Gladia mentioned, there are tools in tech that will help you even get to that aspect. Or you'll meet connections in tech that will guide you there. And that's kind of what, even led me to Gladia. We were talking about tech and stumbled upon real estate. And then here we are. So, so that's a little background on how I decided to get into the minorities in tech. About a year ago, I was slowly building a company called LITS. It's LITS. It's leadership in tech sales with a high focus on how do we get minorities in tech and getting proper training, making sure that they understand what they're getting into, and then obviously going after people that have that drive. That's the biggest thing is you can teach anybody anything, but you can't teach them how to hustle, and you can't give them the drive. You have to want it more than you, right? So and I guess I learned those skills in coaching, where it's like, I can coach you, I can do the best, we can train you up, but I can't play for you, right? So that's kind of the aspect of it.
I love that. There's so much to unpack in like what you just mentioned. First off, talking about being Mexican American and the struggles with that. I mean, I'm a first generation Mexican American, and for me, that was a struggle in accepting my culture. So a lot of time, for majority of the time through high school, I didn't say I rejected it, but I sort of didn't really embrace it because I really wanted to embrace the American culture because my parents didn't really understand it. So that's a huge kind of baggage we're carrying already off the top at a very young age. And then also transitioning and understanding. I've been in the tech space too, where I'm like, like I embrace the American culture, but I still feel left out. I don't feel like I belong because nobody looks like me. And so like you're dealing with all these things. So you've been in tech now, like you said, 10 years, but like how have you navigated that? I really kind of want to unpack that of like, did you feel uncomfortable, or was it a thing of like you embraced it, and how has that evolved now in your position that you're carrying right now?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. So I did not feel it at first. Again, into it focuses on a lot of diversity, and coming from, like you said, I wasn't even. It's not that I wasn't a part of my culture. Like you said, I didn't understand it and I didn't embrace it. In fact, I
Right.
felt more accepted not being Mexican American or feeling Mexican American, right? So like,
Mm,
I also felt like I was a part of the group, like just being American,
right.
being American,
Right.
until I realized I almost wasn't. Not wasn't, but more like there are differences, and
Yeah.
how do I embrace those differences, but also how do I push myself to shine? And I think that was probably the biggest aspect, big turning point for me when I started into it. I was in a class of 35 new hires, people that got promoted. So either they got promoted from another position to the position I was hired in. And so being in a class of 35, there was two Latinos, another woman that was in there with me. She's still a friend of mine today. Her name's Veronica, great person.
Mhm.
But then looking around, and there's a lot of minorities in that class. But again, my goal there was, how do I shine? How do I put my name out there? And I think that was the biggest aspect in gaining respect later on as being Mexican American. You can't just come in and just expect things to happen, right? So,
Right.
and you have to create opportunities for yourself. So there was a lot of struggles where I doubted myself. At the time I was engaged, and I thought, hey, I left the gym where I was extremely successful. I was number three. I had the number 3 gym in 497 clubs, right? So it was, why did I do this? Did I leave? I made the biggest mistake of my life. I can't believe I did it. And this is 3 months in, and at Tech, and then before you know it, I'm going to President's Club, one of the top reps in our industry, and then the sky was the limit from there. And again, I didn't face any challenges until probably 2 or 3 companies later, to where I realized, oh, I'm not completely accepted. So, which drove me more. I was like, you know what? Perfect. I'm not. You don't need to accept me, but I'm going to outshine everybody. I'm going to work harder than everybody. And I have that instilled. And I had a good friend of mine pull me aside. I'll never forget the story. Probably the most impactful question or moment in my career from a minority standpoint. He pulled me aside and we were grabbing lunch. And he said, "Hey, do you come from money?" I said, "What?" I said, "That's a weird question to ask me." I said, "No, I didn't come from money, but my parents worked really hard." And he said, "Both your parents worked?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "That's the difference maker." He's like, figuring out, he's like, the rest of the team is figuring out, how are you working this hard? How are you performing at this level? And it was at a point where everybody's going out, everybody's doing this. Me, I'm putting leads in the system. I'm prepping for my next day. And the way to be successful is you don't prep for that week, month, quarter. You're prepping for that whole year. How do you be successful? And that was the biggest factor. And realizing that I was accepted, but not completely accepted. And it was the first time I felt it. And I was 5 years into tech already and had a good track record, but that didn't matter. It wasn't until I had to prove myself at that company, which I shouldn't have to, right? Either my goals, but sometimes you have to in our position when you are a minority. It's hard.
You got to prove it for some. For
some reason we have to prove it. For some reason we have to. Not for some reason. There's a lot of reasons why we have to. Again, it's either you're going to drive to that challenge. That's what I want to tell these kids. Is that things aren't going to be handed to you. If you're a minority going into an industry that's mainly made up of just people that are from this country only, or don't have an English as a second language, or in that aspect of it, or didn't grow up in a different environment. Again, I grew up with parents that worked both jobs, and I'm the youngest of 5, so definitely wasn't easy on them. I don't even have kids, and I could imagine doing what they did and raising us that way. But that was my mission, was giving kids the tools, letting them understand, just like in sports, right? Like, it's not going to be handed to you. You're going to have people tearing you down. You're going to have people that have to. And even if you don't see it firsthand, it's happening, right? So I think understanding that drive and how to overcome adversity is a big component to where I'm at now. And again, my mentor, his name's Taylor Pena. Worked together at a company called Social Venue, and I couldn't have asked for a better mentor in my career. This person has put his neck out for me, and again, just really told people, like, this is the person that will drive and bring in results based off of his success already. who I was or what I was, or any of my color of my skin or anything like that. So all my background never mattered, never came up. And for him, it's been a pleasure to know him and work for him. And I think that's, again, as I mentioned before, the biggest component is making those connections. But it was hard and challenging. I shouldn't say hard. It was challenging. And I wasn't immediately ready for that challenge. I've never faced a challenge like that when I got to my third company in tech. So it was a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, like, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I think if you could maybe talk more about like maybe that third company where you kind of realize like that moment where, hey, you had that, the minority situation, or,
Minority
I don't
part.
look like, the minority part where like you wasn't, it is based on that, right? So it's that aha moment. And I think, I've experienced that. I'm sure Gladia's experienced that as well too. But I think it gives, some of the people that are watching and listening that, it could resonate with them as well too. So if you could maybe share that experience.
Yeah, I guess, the experience was not much as like at first I thought minority was like I was the only outside hire from everybody else worked together at a previous company, right? So when you have people that are clicking already, and that's also the other aspect that people have to realize about tech is there's like, it's almost like high school. There's click in tech, right? Where like if people work together in the past, you're literally breaking through that circle. So that was kind of, I guess, the hardest part was realizing I'm doing well from a statistics standpoint or performance standpoint, and if for some reason, why is it not resonating? Why am I not being accepted? And maybe I was accepted on certain levels, but on the high end of things, there was definitely a barrier in front of me and the other people that I worked with. And but eventually, again, performing and gaining the respect in different aspects, I think it transitioned everything from, oh, he's Mexican-American, or how is he outperforming us, or how is he continuously here? What is going on? And that's when I had my good friend of mine pull me aside and was like, hey, do your parents work? Like, you come from a different realm. And I'll never forget that a lot of people come from money in this, and in this industry. There is a lot of people that come from money. There's a lot of people that don't, though. And I think understanding, just that hustle and that work factor. So in the beginning, it's like, if you just work hard, I was very naive to the world until about 25, 26 years old. I thought, hey, if you work your butt off, you're going to do well.
It'll pay off.
Right? Put your head down, you stay quiet, and you just show the results. And that's not the case either. There's so many tools and aspects to that. But that was probably the biggest challenge, was understanding, is this real? This is just like, and it was a harsh acceptance. It was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was reality. And then something clicked, and I said, you know what? Screw it. Let's go. Like, I'm going to show you I really am, and I deserve to be here. Right. So, and I think that was the turning point in finding, myself, and it drove me to my culture. It drove me to go talk to my father, who worked side by side with Cesar Chavez, to try to get equal wages, for farm workers, and finding out my mother, talking to my mother, and figuring out like her past. And then, from there, it's like, I want to work with more, minorities and give them the opportunities that I have, because I did have opportunities. And that's the thing, is a lot of people don't have the opportunities that I've had, and I've been fortunate to have in my career. But also I created a lot of opportunities for myself too. And I think that's the biggest component as well, is do these kids know how to create opportunities? Do they know where to go? And we get cut such a stigma of, this is the way life is, and this is how it should be. And that's it. Right. And so for someone like me, when I got to a certain point, I was like, I want to elevate my life, elevate my career. That's what Gladia mentioned. I want to get into real estate and do different things. Everything I'm doing, I always think, and how do I learn and teach others? I think being a good leader is leading from the front, right? So I think that was also, gaining respect from other minorities in my group or in the workforce, especially at Intuit, was, I remember I was at Intuit, and they were like, yeah, we had no idea who you were. You came in here and you kind of just started shining pretty quick, and we're like, who the heck is this guy? Where did he come from?
Right.
Because I came from the outside. I didn't get promoted up.
That's how we do it. So,
man. I was lucky enough to also have support at home with, my fiance at the time, where I'm like, hey, I got a call tomorrow. Help me role play. Like, things like that. Again, that drive and that aspect. I was at the store the other day. I forgot where, the Safeway, and I was this young kid came up to me. He heard me talking to my father. He was ear hustling me, and he was like, hey, you're in tech, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm in tech. And he's like, I've always wanted to get into it. And then we were talking for 20 minutes, and this kid's drive was like on it. And I just want to, I'm working 3 jobs right now and this and that, and I'm doing Uber and all these other things. And I said, just even talking to you, your energy is bringing my energy up. Right. So, I said, here's my,
when you uplift others too.
Yeah. You uplift others, and, and there's nothing better than winning together. Right. And doing things together. And I think even outside of just, minorities in tech or minorities in general, it's, watching people that you've started at the bottom with, and then growing into different aspects. And also I was very accepted in certain groups as well. Like, again, I didn't realize it until, 3rd or 4th or 5th company I was at, that I am Mexican-American and I have to embrace it. Right. So it wasn't, I'm just one of you guys. No, I'm not. And I'm proud to be where I came from. I don't know if I was really proud before. I was proud. Right. It's not that I wasn't proud or anything. I just had no idea. Like,
there's no book to like navigate that when it comes to, because that's what America is, right? We're so diverse, and I feel like our generation kind of really went through like the internet stage, and like we kind of, it's really interesting, like think of like back in high school too, where we just wanted to fit in. At least like that was me, where it's like I just want to fit in. And I don't fit in because they don't understand, my family doesn't understand this culture. And so it's like really interesting to like look back of like, oh, that was so silly of me. Like, well, but it's just, I think that was normal for us navigating like the world then, right? So much was happening. And like, it's so interesting looking back now of like, it's not too late, first off, to embrace your culture. Because that's one thing like I'm doing. So it's really cool that you're using your background in like tech sales to do that. But I did want to ask, like, for many people that are joining us who are mostly in real estate, what is tech sales? Like, how does that compare to like regular sales, or when they consider sales, or like cold calling, and kind of like unpack sort of like a high level view of like your process of tech sales, and like, because people make bank. I know from
I guess if you just want to, you can't really encompass like it just in one. Right. So there's a lot in tech sales. I think, again, coming from the gym, it's literally, I was very lucky to work at the gym. And the reason why is, I know it's kind of going a little off topic, but we were paid off of our P&Ls, right? So we were paid off of like profit and loss statements and our operating profit. So when you're understanding finances, or you're understanding like how companies work, you're able to talk to these companies a lot faster and a lot easier, right? So I had that background. I didn't come from an Ivy League school. I didn't, have all the accolades that everybody else had. So it was different walking into tech for me. I didn't, I wasn't a part of a fraternity. I didn't know 50 people when I got there. When I first got into tech, I knew one person, and out of, Intuit's, 2,000 people that were at that company. And at first I walked around like a ghost, but as far as tech sales go, the sky's the limit. So I think just getting into a company, I had a young kid I was talking to, and he said, I want to get into tech sales. I said, go to a big box. And a big box, what we mean by big box, is a public company, right? So the reason why is they have training programs. A lot of times these startups that kids want to go to, or that sounds great, are going to throw you in, and
a lot of work.
The work is fine. It's more like, how do I even do this? What do I do?
Right.
And that sink or swim is just the worst thing you could do for somebody. Throwing somebody in the fire is not the same as sink or swim. Throwing somebody in the fire is when they have the tools and they're ready to go. Sink or swim is good luck.
We don't know what we have, but figure it out.
Exactly. So I think when I first got into it, I was working for a sub company, or under the umbrella of Intuit. It was a company called Demand Force, and I swear I'm not even lying. I had no idea what we did our first day. Like, I interviewed, I had a thought process of what was happening, but I had no idea what the company completely did. Right? I was just looking to get out of the gym, and I went from managing 93 people to now managing myself, and going from, again, handling all these different departments, to making 120 phone calls a day to small businesses or mid-market businesses. As far as like the structure of tech goes, there is a lot of money to be made. I really am a big component of putting your dues in. It's not going to happen right away. You're not going to make a lot of money. I took a 50% pay cut to go to start off at Intuit, and from there I never looked back. I made a certain amount after that. I made more my first year than I did 2 years at the gym. And then from there, it never looked back. But again, the structure of the gym is, yes, cold. There's going to be cold calling. There's, demoing. There's going to be working with strategic partners. There's so much to it. I can't even get into it too much, or go dive that deep into it. But as far as like, I guess your question is, how do you get into, or like, what's the structure of tech, right? I think for me, it's important to just get into, if you're looking to get into tech, get into a company that has structure. And then from there, you'll figure out what you're passionate about, and for me, it's not as much as like the product as much as like, which is great. The product has to be work and everything like that, but it's more, how are we changing companies' lives? Like, how are we impacting these companies? And, I fell into e-commerce and fintech, and when you talk to these companies and they're growing, I was with companies that were making $250K a month in sales, to 2 years later, they're doing 4 or 5 million a month, and watching that growth with them and being a part of those companies. Or when I first started at Demand Force, you're working with somebody that, owned one auto shop, and then, a few years later, they're opening their second and third and fourth and fifth,
Right.
So I guess like for me, it's more working with these people and finding a passion about it, and the money will come if you hustle. The money will come. And I think in tech, we get something called money eyes, where you want to make a lot faster. And
it happens in real estate too.
Yeah, for sure.
It happens, it does happen. But when you have money eyes, you lose a lot of strategic aspects to the sale, and I gave a speech at Intuit, in front of our group, and it was, again, how do you plan? How to be successful? And I think there's so many things that people miss. It's the small things. If I'm selling a company, again, to make sure you're successful in tech, and for any kids out there, it's anybody you talk to, is build rapport. Build rapport with everybody you talk to. I was with my nephew in an Uber. The Uber guy wasn't driving with us or talking to us at all. I saw something on his dashboard that I could relate to, started talking about that. Before you know it, he opened up about his whole life. And so it's one of these things where these kids nowadays, like you said, with social media and all those things, they don't have that connection to people.
Yeah.
And it's so different. Coaching a kid that's maybe 24 from coaching people like 10 years ago, it's such a different aspect. But I think relatability is probably going to be your key component in driving success, and the money will come. I promise everybody, the money will come as long as you put in the work. You're not, and you have to understand there are going to be setbacks. It's going to be hard. You're going to question yourself. If you don't question yourself, then if you wake up happy every day, like this is going well, like no challenges, then something, you're not doing something right. you're not pushing hard enough. I can't tell you how many nights where I woke up and I was like, this is scary. This is terrifying. I'm going to a new company and there's so much more pressure, whatever it is. But as far as just, skill sets, the skill sets I just, it has to come from you. Everything else will fall into place. You'll get taught what to do. You'll get taught how to make a process. But that drive, that hustle, and that want it more than the next person, you got to have. For me, I always put somebody. So I always like kind of locked somebody at the company. I was like, all right, I know this guy. I don't know him personally, but I'm going to get this guy. Like he's always number two. My goal is to get to him. And so things like that. So that's kind of, I guess, how I drove myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really cool in regards to like when I got into tech too, I actually worked like the big box, so worked for AT&T. And then what we did was we were sales for internet products, right? So it would be like Google paid advertising. It would be Yellow Pages, because they actually had yellowpages.com or yp.com at that time. So they were selling advertising there too. But just to get hired there and then go through a 2-week training course, intensive training course, learning like how their process is one, right? How to enter your sales in the system, how to use like Salesforce. So that's where I got introduced to CRM systems and how to track your sales and how to follow up with people. And so that's a great aspect of a big box, is that they have all those tools to train you the right way, but some of them, like some of the people that went through training, I'm still friends with now, but some of the people that went through training didn't make it through training those 2 weeks, right? So it's crazy because tech is, like you said, it's cliquish. It's I think it also is a small community in tech. People don't realize, like,
Very
when
small.
you're moving,
Yeah.
small community, and as you move up, I think I think in programming, at least, people move maybe every 2 to 3 years to a different company, right?
It
But
is.
they follow people, right? Hey, I'm with this startup here. Come work over here, and they get
It's all
paid more.
recruiting. They all recruit each
Yeah,
other.
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
nonstop poaching. That's what it is. But to kind of capitalize on, I guess, or to piggyback on what you said, the thing about, again, I stress about going to a big box is if you get these tools, like you said, how to use a CRM, how to use drip campaigns, how to use emails, how to have the right cadence on everything. Once you get a process down, and if you're successful at one company, I promise you, you will be successful at the next. Nothing changes. Yes, the product's different, the sales cycle is different, whatever you want to say, but the main tools that got you there are going to be the same ones that's going to make you successful at the next one, which is, are you really willing to put in the effort and the work to learn? I was at a different company. Actually, when I was at Intuit, one of our big, I would literally go home and study our industry, like figure things out just to get ahead. I think it's when people think they're really good at it. So I'll give you an example. The top 5 employees at every company, there's always 2 people that stay within the top 5. The other ones, they'll rotate in, right? You'll be top 5 that month, or the next month, and that's because they're not doing the same thing that got them there. Like, they're having a good month, and it's great to have a good month, but then why is your next month not good, right? Like, and when
Talk about consistency too.
Yeah, and say, when I mean roller coasters, like I said in the beginning, I don't mean roller coasters as far as like months go. I mean roller coasters in learning how to pivot, figuring like how to drop things. Like, hey, this didn't work. Let's move past it. And I think even in sports, like, it's very similar. Hey, that play didn't work. Boom, that's how
game plan. Right? Different game plans.
You move on your feet, right? So especially when you coach at a high school level, or you're coaching a championship team, and again, just at tech, again, the biggest thing is tools. You have to have those tools ingrained in you, and and that will go everywhere. I mean, I still use some of the same tools I used 10 years ago today, right? So
it's just adapting too, because and one thing I like that you said is, things you have to learn to pivot. You have to learn to keep up with the industry. That's entrepreneurship too. So like, that's why I always tell people too, starting out, and especially there's like entrepreneurial bug going around where everybody wants us to quit their job, start a business without having the proper tools. And I saw a reel yesterday with this other guy who's like gone into sales engineering, and he was like, if the reason you want to start your own business is because you can't work for someone, you're not going to succeed as a business owner. You have to learn the process. So if you can go somewhere, and even anybody, it doesn't matter your age. I knew somebody in our wholesaling group who paused to get a sales boot camp, which I want to ask you about that after, to get into tech sales. Right. So it's like, it's never too late, first off, but like, why not learn the process and how sales, which is, if you're in real estate or many other companies, like, that's your bread and butter. If you learn the process, if you learn the drip campaigns, like you mentioned, if you learn like how the sales cycles, you can take those skills and, start a business, start a company. So like, people don't really like take a step back and look at it from that perspective. They just want the like, oh, well, Instagram or this social media post told me I can start a business, or I don't need a job. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because that applies like,
it applies everywhere.
It applies everywhere. But I did want to like get your thoughts on like there's so many tech boot camps too, and if you have recommended any, if you are starting out, or if you think those are useful as well.
I do. So it's funny you ask. I can't remember the company name off the top of my head, so I apologize for that. But my nephew, who's 19, and again, he sees, what I do every day, right? He's I work from home, so sometimes he'll come by and hear me, on my day to day, and he wants to be in business. And I said, hey, the first thing, Nobody did this when I was 19. So
Right.
luckily you got me, right? So here, let's go. So here's what you're going to do. I said, before you get to like me teaching you, you need to learn it. And it's best to learn with people at your level, right? Because you're going to get close to these people. You're going to learn, you're going to, drive, have that same drive with these people, and you'll figure out who to help you get better. So there are some boot camps out there. I do recommend doing that if you have the ability to do that. So he's going to do a 6-week course, and he's starting his in August. At the same time he's doing school, and it's just a few hours a day where they just teach you how to cold call. I can't remember the company name. I'll send it to you after.
Yeah.
But there are a ton of companies out there, and I think, it's pretty easy to research, and why not? I mean, I will go to, like, even me, I'll go to, chat with different people just to get their strategies. Like, I'm continuously growing every day. If I was the best I'm not the best at what I do just yet. Or I mean, in sales, right? I'm not the best salesperson in the world. And the biggest thing is learning how to adapt, learn from everybody. And I remember my last day at Intuit, I'll never forget my last day at Intuit, before I moved on to a different company. There was a girl there, and she was struggling, and it was her second or third week on the phones. And she asked me, like, what do I do? I said, let's go make calls together. You go a call, I'll go a call. Go a call, I'll go a call. She was saying a few things that I was writing down, and this is her first job in out of college. And I've been doing in sales since I was 19, and I'm taking notes from her, right? So, boot camps are great. I think, even reading online, staying on top of, just like you said, being on your LinkedIn, or just talking to people, or following articles, or following blogs.
The tech trends, like with AI, for example, like keeping up with that.
Exactly. That's a whole nother ball game.
It's a whole other podcast.
But yeah, I mean, even me, I'm like, what is this going on, right? So, you can, I think boot camps are great. I think anything you can do to elevate yourself that the other person is probably not doing. And same thing in football, right? So, like, I mean, at Del Mar or our high school, what were people doing? They were going out, hanging out. Not me. I was studying plays. I mean, I got kicked out of one of my classes because I was going over my plays for our game that night. So just, again, preparation and just doing those things, and just being prepared and being able to pivot fast. But yeah, boot camp classes, I definitely think that why not do something to help elevate your career? Why not do something that's going to make you better? So.
Yeah, and that's something that I've heard too is, there's some really inexpensive ones. I think the ones that I did look into, Careerist, I think, is one. There's another one too I can't think of off the top of my head. But yeah, once you send that to me, I'll post it in the show notes too. But I think that's really key is you're always a student of the game of whatever industry, right? Like, so you're never comfortable. I think we talk about that because it's so easy to get comfortable, especially when you're in like somewhat cushy job or what you consider cushy. And I think that's where people get stagnant and, stop learning because ego, all that stuff, which we can go on and on about. But I did want to sort of pivot and talk about real estate and how you kind of got into real estate. Because I know you mentioned you and your dad are investing, but I kind of want to tie in with tech because you're using the money you're making in tech to, invest. So I don't think we've really talked to somebody who's kind of using their job to invest.
I guess, I mean, I love what I do. I think that's just the biggest component to me, as well as when I wake up, I'm excited. But as far as pivoting into real estate, a good friend of mine who also went to Del Mar, and, was a star athlete there as well. I've known this guy forever. Was a mentor of mine growing up, or just a good friend of mine. He was in real estate. He got into it 12 years ago, and he was just telling me about different aspects of it. And I think it's really important as well when you're dealing with your own finances to have multiple avenues of cash flow, right? Like it be very diverse in your financial portfolio. Again, something that I didn't know as a young kid, or even an older 30-year-old, I didn't realize. And learning from my parents, learning that you don't just, it's not just work 9 to 5 every day. There's so many ways to make money, and we're barely scratching the surface on how to do that. So for me, it was, what am I passionate about? My mother and father owned various properties. So it was just something I wanted to fall into. And I reached out to my friend and asked him to mentor me. Like you said, for me, there's no ego. I don't care who you are, whatever it is. And, he was so successful, and he's very successful. And so my goal was, I've been lucky enough to be at companies where, I've invested in stock and in these avenues, and it was kind of just sitting there. And I was like, what do I do with this money? Right? Like I'm single, 37 years old. What should I do? And I also want to set up myself up to, not have to like work like my parents did until, it was the end. Right. Or
Yeah.
70 years old or 65 years old. I want to make sure that, I'm having just different avenues coming in for me. And so I fell into real estate. Me and my good friend are working on a deal, that's praying close happens in September, late August, September, on a few apartment complexes. And we're going that route. And my father and I both own a fourplex that we're building ADUs on, and we're going to put two more.
Nice.
So, I was telling Gladia, it's almost like starting over in tech. I know nothing.
Yeah.
And there's so much in real estate. It's overwhelming.
It is.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a big thing I wanted to mention is it's going to be overwhelming in anything you do.
Yeah.
If you're challenging yourself, it's going to be overwhelming. If you feel like it's easy, you're not really putting yourself through the whole test. Right?
No, you want to feel overwhelmed. If you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you feel like it's a lot, that means like you're heading in the right direction. It means you're pushing yourself. So it's like getting in that level of like uncomfortability.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When you're overwhelmed, it's more like also learning how to take a step back and just take a breath. Okay, let's breathe. Now, which way I like to go? Because you probably know more than I do, Claudia. I'm still such a rookie in this game. I barely figured out what the wholesaling was a month ago, right? So,
yeah, I know. When I broke it down to you, you were like, "Wait, what?" Like, everyone's always like that.
Start from the top.
Right.
But again, I just if it's overwhelming, it's going to be overwhelming. I mean, but again, even my buddy who would send me stuff, he would be like, "Hey, check a look at these places," or he would give me a task like, "Hey, I want you to do these and these and these things, and tell me your thoughts on it." Not even like find a property for us to invest in. It was just give me your thoughts. What do you think? And it's changing my mindset to now starting to see big picture items. And how do we do this? Like, what's the process? And I think getting your first deal done is in any company you go to is like such a high moment in that person's career or path or whatever they're doing, because now you're seeing the process firsthand. Right. So I think that was a big thing. So getting into real estate, it's just more, I wanted to, add to my portfolio what I was doing and using all the hard work that I'm doing now in tech. But the best part is to this aspect is, using my skill sets I learned in tech to negotiate or to mingle or to meet people or to reach out to contacts that I have. Very
transferable skills, I feel like, with what you're doing to real estate.
Yeah. And I mean, again, and you can't be shy or have an ego in anything you do. Hey, I haven't talked to Gladia since high school. So, but I see that she's doing actually a friend of mine told me to reach out to you. I don't know if I told you. I think I told you that. Yeah. A friend of mine, Danielle, who I've known since, forever.
Yeah. Yeah. We played ball together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was like, I'm trying to get into real estate. She's like, reach out to Gladia. She's always had a great head on her shoulders. And I was like, oh, I remember Gladia. So I'll definitely reach out to her. And here we are. So.
Yeah, no, doing the podcast. Yeah. I may have to get her on because she's doing all types of stuff. But I think that's also the power of like you talk about ego too, right? Like not like being okay with not knowing anything. Like and for a lot of us, even for Tim and I, when we first got started, we were almost in that same place as well of like, this is really overwhelming. Like, what do we do? But with like anything, you just simplify it, right? You just take it one step at a time. And so it's nice that you had somebody too that to give you some structure, right? Hey, check these things out and let me know what you think. Because that's the best way you're going to learn. And now it's like you're picking things up too, because you're working in deals and everything. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think it's also like he's creating a partnership with me versus like, tasking me out. Or I was just like, hey, you're like, being like a gopher for him. It's more like I respect who you are. So I would like your feedback on it. Like even, with Gladia, with you, I'm like, hey, I'm going to send you a few things. Like, tell me your thoughts. Like I would love some feedback. And I think, even in anything you do as well is getting feedback on things and having, constructive criticism is also good. I sent my buddy a deal in real estate and he was like, why do you think this is good? And I gave him my 2 cents. It wasn't that he didn't think it was good. He just wanted to know where my thought process was. Right. And I think that also allowed him to see like, okay, he's at this level versus like starting off brand new. So, using my skills in tech, it's more like, all right, I know how to identify what good looks like. As long as you tell me what I should be looking for, I can quickly identify, not quickly, but identify what good looks like. then refine your process, and you'll be fast. And then things will just come, and now we're rocking and rolling. So, and in tech, I think that was probably another aspect is it took so long to gain a process that was just streamlined. And like, when you're making 120 calls a day and you're just trying to turn and burn, and before you figure it out, now you're making 30 calls a day or 40 calls a day or 50, and they're strategic calls. And now you're just, you're elevating the game. So I feel like it's very similar in real estate. You can call all these people that, again, are in default and all these other things that you can do just to try to get there. But again, you'll be able to streamline like on what that kind of default means. Are they in are they foreclosing really? Are they not foreclosing? Are they, again, for me, it's just so brand new. It's such a brand new area. And for me, I'm excited to learn about it though. I think that's the other thing is excitement. And are you like seeing your future? Are you seeing where you can go? And is it a part of your 5 to 10 year plan? And how it's elevating you? And I think, setting goals. I heard somebody say this once, and I really liked it. Is instead of celebrating, instead of setting small goals, set a big goal, but celebrate milestones. Within
the process, the progress. Yeah,
exactly.
Actually, I think it was the founder of one of my companies I was at. He said, instead of celebrating, our big goal was to, buy out a company. So that was our big goal, but we celebrated milestones along the way. We didn't have we just want to get to 50 employees or 100 employees. We knew what our big goal was, and we celebrated milestones along the way. And I think that's also something I think is really helpful.
Yeah. And I think you bring a good point in your mentality in, being more of a partner and, trying to learn, especially in real estate. I think that's important too, just because you're getting into something very new, but at the same time, you're learning from someone else. But that relationship is more of a partnership instead of a, understudy or something like that.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think, but again, like I said, you have to be willing to put in the work with it. And so it's like, how do you balance life? And I think that's also a huge aspect is how do we balance life in this crazy world that we're in, from just, being at work and helping, my company grow. I'm at a startup right now. And so, working on my weekends. And again, priorities take place, right? So when I got into real estate, I said, okay, goodbye to things that weren't important to me anymore. Like these things are things that are not going to get me to where I want to go. So I'm going to walk away from those things. I'm going to also not disconnect, but maybe push people a little bit aside that I'm sorry, not a part of my path. Right. And I think meeting people that are part of your path more, and then you realize it's okay. They're running a different path and that's fine. That's their path, not meeting up with my path. Right. So I think that was also a big component. Like, I don't go out, I don't drink really, I don't do any of those aspects. And I'm laser focused on, if my buddy sends me a listing, he's like, I need you to go see this house on Saturday. I'm going to see that house on Saturday. I'm going to these real estate agents. I'm developing connections. I've probably met more real estate agents in the last 3 months than I'd like to count. So, but again, it's just, I think it's having that drive and that effort where you are going to use your time and it is going to be tiring and it's exhausting. I went to see 5 houses in one day and I was dying. And I was like, on a Saturday, which is normally people are like, Saturday's my day off. Well, it's not a day off. So,
right.
So it's like, and again, people think like, oh, I'm off work. Let's go to happy hour. No, I'm off work. I'm going to enjoy my family time. But in my downtime, I'm just sitting there
studying.
Instead of going on Instagram and just scrolling up and down, I'm putting in leads in, or I'm trying to send out emails for my calls the next day or whatever it is. Right. So there's also that aspect.
I love that. I know we have just a couple minutes here, but I know you mentioned there are some tools that you're using to help with real estate. Is there any that you use in tech as well? Is there anything specific or that's kind of helping you during this whole transition as you're kind of getting into real estate?
I have 3 or 4 tools. I can't remember them off my bat for real estate. Actually,
no pressure.
My buddy said to me. But I have initially I went off the MLS because that's all I knew. Right. And then my buddy sent me a list of code violations. Right. So I was going on code violations. And I think it's and then there was another list on people that were defaulting on their mortgage. And one, how can we help them out? Or maybe we can, again, be that source. So again, there's like different aspects to real estate. So it was like I was trying to hit too many corners. I think that was my problem in the beginning. He was tasking me out to do so many different like avenues to where like I now wanted to focus on just income property. So that's all I'm doing now is we're just focusing on an apartment complex. Yeah, I'd rather focus on the long game. And I think in real estate, I don't know, you two could probably tell me better, or Glady, you can. It's, I think, like you said, the money eyes thing is they just want to buy a house and flip it and make money. Like, yeah, that's great. But again, that's a lot more risky, and you have to calculate it.
And time too. I think, Tim, we're just talking about this too, about a property I think you're looking at in Kansas City, and you're like, yeah, it's a flip. I can make this amount of money, but I'm like, well, how big of a flip is it? Like how much time, especially when you're virtual or out of state, if that takes a lot of your time, you're taking time away from doing other things. And so that's always a balance. And one of my mentors has talked about, like, you shouldn't be, unless it's like, it's a very straightforward flip, you shouldn't be flipping like huge projects, because that's going to take away from your active income or income that you could like instead focus on wholesaling, stacking your cash, and being able to then invest that into something. So yeah, I'm spot on. I mean, you talking about like money eyes or whatever we talk about all the time with wholesaling, and counting your deal, counting your check before your deal even goes through. Like we've definitely done that, where it's like, yeah, we lock in a buyer, it's going through title, it's like, oh, we're good, a good 20K. Maybe it's like there's a freaking lien on the property. Oh, they owe taxes. Oh, that's dwindling down. Oh, it's just stuck in title, or this and this happened, and then the deal's dead. And like all that energy that you put in and like counting your money is gone. So it's like, focus on the process. Don't be married to anything, because as an investor, we shouldn't be married, or there should be no emotions attached to anything. So that's the biggest thing. And I think that can apply to anything, right? And like, even in your industry, in tech sales, like don't be married to whatever, like until the deal closes, like then, celebrate those little wins. But I think that's an important aspect.
I think just to kind of capitalize on that is, I think even in tech, right? So what we do is, how do you break up your day versus what deals you're going after, right? So do you're like your bucket, the way I do it is like 5 to 10% should go after huge deals, but I don't spend much time on those. I basically have touch points with those things, and if as long as through the whole process, because some deals in tech take 6, 9, a year to close. So if I'm only going after those, like I'm going to be missing every month.
You need that momentum.
Yeah. So like what you do is you spend a majority of time on smaller deals. You spend a majority, and then you spend the rest of your time on deals that can close, or deals that you can handle now. And like you said, the worst thing you can do is say, hey, I got 2 deals closing. And then we used to call them like, where's it at? It's lost in the matrix. Like we never see that deal come in.
Right.
So like, and then that's the worst thing you want to do, is to have your boss be like, hey man, you said you got a deal coming in. Like, where's it at? Don't say nothing until that deal has crossed the line, until those contracts are signed. Don't, you keep your head down and keep grinding on it out. But so I feel like the same thing in real estate. Like, what time management do I have? Am I focusing on wholesaling a certain amount of time, apartment complexes or income property or rentals, whatever it is? Like, how am I breaking up my time?
I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's kind of the journey that I've come in. And yes, I will say that things that mistakes, or not mistakes, but there's challenges along the way. So anybody looking to get into tech, it couldn't be more of a time than now.
Right. I'm seeing that even more. And it's okay if you're in real estate, even starting out. Again, these skills are transferable. Why not learn the process from a big box company where, can show you that, and then you can still be working your real estate business while you're building that out. So I think the time to make money again is now, or stacking up on your cash, because of where the market's going. There's going to be huge opportunities to really get really wealthy in the next year or two. But I know, to close out, I think you mentioned you do some coaching, but I kind of wanted to see like kind of closing it out with diversity in tech is like, where kind of do you see that moving forward as tech becomes what it's becoming with like AI and everything. What do you see maybe companies doing, or where are you hoping, and whatever the company you work for, to like build that inclusive environment for, Black and brown communities, minorities, to get into something like tech
I think
sales?
I think it starts off at a young level. I think it's in, like, again, my goal when I was, hopefully starting my company, as far as just from a diversity standpoint, was reaching out to high school level, reaching out to junior colleges. I never talked to anybody in tech until I was, again, 25. I didn't even know the world was out there, right? I didn't know people were making this much money, or allowing to have like time management at home. And, at the gym, I was working 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Right. So every day for 6 days a week. So, understanding that life balance. But yeah, I think it starts off at the youth level, and it starts off figuring out, I mean, in high school, I feel like there's career day and all these things, but what careers are they talking about?
Right.
Like what are we highlighting here? Are we highlighting a 9-to-5 job, or are we highlighting the skill sets that is going to drive your whole career, your whole life? So I think that's where I want to go to, is figure out, like, how can we impact people in high school and give them direction, just like they used to do in the 70s or whatever, with like skill jobs. They used to have mechanic shops, right? They used to have things that were going to in the economy at that time. Well, where is that nowadays in tech? Right. So where's that nowadays?
Right.
We don't have that. We don't have like, cold calling courses, or just like how to send emails out. Nothing like that. It's literally do a book report and then it's handed in. Like, how has it not changed? Right. So,
we talk about like taxes, right? Or like, how do you do your taxes? Like, there was never a class, or like a life class like that.
Yeah.
They don't want, they don't want us to know. That's
the thing, right? Like, so I think, come on. They're teaching kids what a credit score is, right?
Exactly.
What an IRA is, what a CD is, how to like create generational wealth. That's not there. Right.
Right.
Not from like the baby boomer time, where you work 9 to 5, American dream. That's dead. I'm sorry. That's gone.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of where my goal is to figure out at the youth level, is how do we inspire these kids and let them know the opportunities in the world for them.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said that about the 401k. Is like, when I got my first job, like, my parents never worked like corporate America or anything. They didn't have 401k. And, my mom was like a housekeeper, and, my dad kind of was a machinist and stuff. So it wasn't a factor where, when I did get my first job and they hand me this paperwork for 401k, I'm like, what is it? Like,
Sure.
I don't even know. Right. So, just things like that you get into the workspace and no one teaches you about, if it doesn't come from your family or other people, a mentor or whatever case, that you get into a certain space, right?
Exactly. And I think, I think that's just, like I said, it's knowledge in the industries and knowledge in time. If you only know what you know, so
exactly.
And if you don't know where to find the information, then you're going to think that you're doing all that you can. And,
right.
Okay. So
I love that. Well, before we head out, what do you want to leave the audience with today? Because you unpacked a lot. I think you dropped a lot of gems, as we call them, gold nuggets. But what do you want to leave the audience with, and how can they reach you or reach out to you?
Yeah. I'll give you my contact. You have my contact information. So definitely various ways to reach out to me. You can follow me on LinkedIn, whatever, various different avenues. But I think just leaving the audience with, look, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you feel like you love doing, do it. Don't let anybody stand in your way. There are no glass ceilings. Get that logic out of your mind. And I think we're told, like, this is as far as you can go. Sorry, bullshit. You can't. That is a lie. You can fly as hard as you want, as long as you're willing to put in the work. And don't have an ego. Don't have a chip on your shoulder. Where you don't want help. Ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Ask for help. Don't sit there. It's like in high school where you're doing math and you look up and they're on a whole different section and you just sit there quietly because you're behind. Like, don't do that. Right? Ask for help, and you'll find out that more people are willing to help you if you ask them. But they're not going to volunteer their time to you. You need to ask me for help, and I will help you. So ask for help, and don't worry if you don't have it figured out. I'm still figuring things out. So that's the last thing I'll leave.
I love it, Matt. Well, so much appreciate we're able to get you on, because I think you offer a ton of value, and happy to check in with you down the road and seeing kind of where you're doing with the youth and getting people into tech, because I think that's going to be huge over the next 5 or 10 years. I think that's going to revolutionize our world. Like I said, maybe we have another conversation on AI, but again, appreciate you taking the time. We'll definitely connect, may work some deals for sure on the real estate side. But
let's go.
No,
hope,
thank you both for your time, and I'm excited. I watch you guys' podcast, so I'm excited to continue following both of you as well.
Awesome. Well, appreciate everybody who tuned in or who will be tuning in. Don't forget to follow us, like this video, subscribe to our channel. We're on here every week. We'll be back next week. But till then, have a great weekend. Happy 4th of July. Catch y'all later.
Thank you, everybody.